Jack, when you're flying here from New York, what do you do on the plane? What do you usually do? Like, what did you do?
I watched movies, Joey.
Did you watch any of this flight?
I did.
What did you watch?
I watched over the shoulder of the woman in front of me, or to the front, to the side, and I watched Anyone But You.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yep, I watched it for the first time.
Well,
I didn't hear a single thing.
Really?
Don't need to.
What was your reaction to it just over the shoulder?
Well, to be fair, I caught about half the movie, everyone.
Okay.
But I kind of liked it.
Yeah?
It seems really awful in the best way possible. So I can't wait for the next 3.
The next
It did make a lot of money.
We're going to franchise the shit out of the romantic comedy.
Oh, 100%. I believe Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney are about to take over the genre in the worst way possible.
Oh, my God. I can't even imagine.
Or the best, I guess we'll see.
I don't know. Glenn Powell's been popping off, though.
He's in Twisters later this year.
Mm-hmm.
Does Sydney have another movie?
Probably.
Immaculate?
She was in Immaculate.
Yeah, but I
I
already
saw
came-
that. It was
Yep.
okay. I don't know what else she's doing.
We'll see.
Yeah, but yeah. So welcome back to Stacked Podcast, episode 134. Today's gonna be a fun one. We have last week we had a bit of a divide, and again today we have a bit of a divide going. We're doing Los Angeles versus New York films. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have a very special guest today. This is Olivia's girlfriend, Jack. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. This is my second appearance on the show. Previously,
Yeah.
also as Olivia's girlfriend, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of
course.
course, yeah. And the
Anytime.
reason we're doing this is because Jack hails all the way from the East Coast. So he's coming on here. We're our West Coasters. We have 2 LA boys, 1 Orange County boy, and then we have our New York perspective over here. But,
Absolutely.
you know, funny story, though. Jack and I actually spent some time together in New York back in college. We did a 2-week course. Yeah, it was a class.
It was a class trip.
It was a class trip where we went to New York and we met a bunch of really cool people.
Ben Stiller.
We met Ben Stiller. We met some Broadway producers, some film producers, cinematographers, a bunch of people. It was a really neat experience.
It was. I feel like that was the trip that neither of us were prepared for.
No.
You for the weather.
Yeah. The weather was weird. I was expecting snow, but when we went, it was just cold.
It was just cold
there
and
was
icy.
no snow.
No.
There wasn't any snow. But it was a good time. So I think it's fitting that, you know, we're over here on the New York side. I'm not saying I'm taking a side, but you know, we bonded over New York at one point in our past. So yeah, this will be a good discussion.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I guess Jack, just to start it off, just to, you know, kick this discussion off to the races. I'm just rambling. What do you look for? Since you are a New Yorker, you live in New York, what has your perspective changed on New York City based on what you thought it was going to be from movies and then now living there?
My perspective has changed a lot from what I expected New York to be like versus what it's actually like. I feel like you watch a lot of movies and New York is such a central character. And it's true because everyone, in my opinion, everyone in LA feels like they're the main character because you're kind of in your own bubble. And then you go to New York and it's like our bubbles are right next to each other. They're very close. So
There's no room.
in my opinion, I feel like New York takes you and puts you in this new world and they're like, you're not the main character. You might be in your own story, but it forces you to think about other people. And
Yeah.
if you can't adapt, it kind of kicks you out. So I think it changed my perspective in so many ways.
New York is about the collective, whereas LA is about the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. How about you guys? As Chris, as someone who lives in LA, has your perspective of LA changed over the years based on what you thought growing up?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, I didn't grow up in LA. So when I was growing up, I had like that very rose-tinted glasses kind of impression of LA where, you know, like, oh, the city of angels, right? Like the magic of the movies, all this stuff. And then you come to downtown and you're like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah, this place is a shithole. But that is not to say that LA is not without its charm. There's a lot of great stuff in LA. The food's delicious. There's a lot of great community in LA. But yeah, there definitely is like, I had like my La La Land moment where it's like, you know, you kind of go in kind of like, oh, it's beautiful, it's magical. And then you kind of emerge from it a little like, man, this is also
Jaded.
like this is where dreams go to either be made or to die. And yeah, so, you know, hopefully we still make it, but I like LA just fine. And I like New York too, in my limited few times I've been there.
Brandon, where do you stand? Because I know you're a little anti-LA, honestly,
am.
even though you are a West Coaster.
I love the West Coast. I love the more spread out spaces. I love that there's not that New York doesn't have trees. I mean, there's big trees in the
It's
middle.
just different.
It's just different
it is.
trees,
Yeah, it totally
you know.
is.
And I prefer like more of a suburban, with a driving distance to the big city than I do like. Oh, I don't want to
deep city.
don't want to be deep in the city.
Sure.
Too loud for me.
No, I get it. Is it an overwhelming environment?
It
Yeah,
is. New York's noise pollution is one of the worst in the
I've
world.
never
Oh,
been
yeah.
to New York.
Surprised.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've never been to the state or the city.
Whoa.
I've been to the East Coast like 5-6 times. So I've just never been to New York.
Wow.
So that's my
crazy.
big admission.
It is a wild place. And Jack has a unique perspective because he also went to school in Southern California. And I remember when we first met, you were on the La La Land craze.
I was addicted.
Okay,
Let's-
but weren't we all on some level?
We
Yeah.
were. So I guess that's
Yeah.
like gonna. Let's talk about La La Land. I feel like it's gonna
It's just
come up
natural.
inevitably.
It should be known that it was my morning alarm. Joey
Which
had to
one?
hear it from a door over at like 4 in the morning.
Which song?
Another Day of Sun.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And like looking back, I'm like, that's psychotic.
I listen to every morning.
So sorry to put you guys through that.
It's all good. It's all good because well, I mean, it's like
Set
any
through
alarm
gratitude.
is gonna be annoying after a while. Like even the basic iPhone, like the
Yep.
like that is like literally traumatizing for most people.
Yeah.
You know, so like I don't know,
And
but
that's like every time you watch La La Land, you're just like, that's from you.
I think that movie has like I don't know about you guys, but my perspective on it has vastly changed. Not for the worse or anything. I still love it. I loved it back then. I love it now, but I love it for different reasons. I think
Yeah,
when this movie
agree with
came
that.
out, we were all on our way to school in Southern California. We went to Chapman University, which is in Orange County, for film school. And I think for us, when we read it at the time, now if you guys read it differently, please let me know. But it's a movie about chasing your dreams.
Yeah.
And like
time,
in the
yeah,
City
that's
of
how I read it.
Angels.
Absolutely.
And I think that was really inspiring for us. But then as I've gotten older and now that I've lived in the city and I realized that like actually achieving the dreams you set out for that you set for yourself when you were younger is so much, it's pretty much impossible. Like things are never going to play out the way that you think they are. And I think that movie explores that concept.
Yeah, that ending
really well.
Yeah, it really does.
Absolutely. Where do you stand on that
It's-
movie these days?
It's a hard watch. now.
Yeah.
I feel like back then I had this romanticized version of like what the journey's gonna be like. I think that's what La La Land gives you. It's like a romanticized version of chasing your dreams.
Yeah.
And I do love the ending. I think a lot of people hate it, but personally, it's been one of my favorite parts of it is that
Yeah.
it doesn't give you that satisfaction because that's real. But I think nowadays I look at it and I'm kind of mixed because I still love it. It's still one of my top 4 favorite movies, but it's one that I have to visit if I'm looking for something.
Sure. No, I
Yeah,
get
looking
that.
for inspiration. Now it's kind of hard to watch.
It really is. It's that the ending is tough because and like honestly like I think the mature mindset is like it's not necessarily a sad ending. Like both of them have achieved
be
what they
okay,
wanted.
yeah.
Like she
real.
became the actress she wanted to be. She seems like and everybody like hates Tom Everett Scott in that movie because he seems like a nice guy. Like, dude is there. They seem to have a happy relationship, and like Ryan Gosling, like he opens
his little
jazz club,
yeah,
that he's always wanted to
Sebs.
open. Like they both got what they wanted. I doubt that overall they're set, but there is that bittersweet nostalgia of like what could have been and what
Yeah,
maybe
if he
LA
went down the right
promises
path. Yeah.
in movies. And I think the movie explores that really well
Yeah.
because it opens with this Technicolor landscape, but then it slowly becomes this more personal and grounded character drama.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big thing New York versus LA does, where LA kind of has a romanticized version of life a lot of the time. And then I feel like New York, just based on the culture there, it just drops you
More
into a
brutal.
world where it's like, if La La Land was made in New York, it would be a lot more real about things that suck.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of things would go worse.
That's,
Yeah.
You know, I definitely think that's true because there is like a big cultural difference between LA and New York because, you know, you're basically a country apart, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying about how like La La Land has like that kind of optimism, and then if it were to be made in New York, it'd have a bit more of a pessimistic lens on things. And I definitely think that's true. But another movie directed by Chazelle that's also about making movies is
boy.
Babylon.
Oh,
I don't want
boy.
to dwell on this for too long because Babylon's been talked to death.
Yep.
But yeah, that does kind of have that more pessimistic glimpse into what the film industry is like there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean, boy, does it. But
Man.
It's a before and after, really, because it's like it's Damien Chazelle before he made Whiplash and like blew up as a director with La La Land, and then it's like after, because like you can see like his the reaction to First Man within the film industry, like obviously like destroyed his reputation, even though it's a pretty good movie, and as such like his view of Hollywood is so cynical. And you can see that in like the visions, like the juxtaposing vision of Hollywood. Like you've got this like very bright and, like you said, Technicolor environment that is a musical, and musicals are like essentially like an escape from reality. And you've got Babylon, which is like kind of like a grungy, like coke-filled adventure
Yeah.
about like you not lasting forever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a big difference between LA and New York movies is like LA movies typically are about someone trying to be big. Like you were saying, the protagonist. It's about people wanting to be that star. But like I think New York stories are much more like the characters in those films. Now I'm sure there's examples that are different.
Huge
Actually,
ensembles.
I can think of different ones, but yeah, they're usually ensemble pieces, and yeah, it is usually about the better of the community and like just being a part of something bigger than yourself. You know what I mean? Like I think Spider-Man. Should we
Spider-Man
bring it
2.
up? Should we dive
Let's
into
do
it? I know, big Spider-Man fan over here. And I want to bring up one particular one that I think, at least from what I understand of New York, captures the city very well, and that's Spider-Man 2. Specifically, the train scene
Love it.
after the big fight,
when they-
when they all help Spider-Man, they carry him, they see him without his mask on, they're standing over him, like all these New Yorkers, and then they make that promise to like keep his secret.
He's
Yeah.
just a kid.
That's like
Older than my
that's I
son.
think that to me is what New York is all about.
Definitely.
100%. I feel like you get on any train in New York, and if you had something like that happen, hey, people are going to be pissed off because now they're late to work.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me. New Yorkers are the kindest, like toughest people in the world, because if something like that were to happen today, I feel like half the people would be filming it, and then the other half would be like, "Yo, get out of the way! I'm trying to get off."
Yeah.
So let's get to her.
Right.
Hurry this up.
You know, another
it's
thing I
kinda
really
funny.
like about Sam Raimi's vision of New York is, I think it's you see it a bit more in his first Spider-Man movie, where you see like just little inserts of like the pedestrians talk, like some of them talking to the news about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it's like they're all such surprisingly developed characters, even if they have like one line and one shot for like 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's like it's such a lived and breathed in vision of what New York is, and I really like that.
Also, I think like the symbolism of transportation between the two cities. New York, you see a lot. Okay, I just watched. I'm gonna go on a little side quest, side tangent. I just watched a movie called L.A. Story. It's written by Steve Martin, starring Steve Martin. It's from the '90s, and there's a funny bit in there where there's this woman from London visiting Steve Martin, who lives in L.A., and she's like, "Oh, do you just want to walk to this place?" And he like laughs in her face, like, "Walk in L.A.? Like, give me a break!" Like, nobody really walks. Nobody really takes the public transit. I mean, by nobody, I mean like the vast majority of people. Like, clearly there's the metro here. Like, plenty of people do, but it's not as big a part of the culture as the subway is in New York. Where New York, it's like there's literally no point in having a car.
Because it's like
Yeah.
it's gonna be faster to take the train anyway.
Well, I mean, but that's where it sort of gets and develops its sense of personality and community. Like
Yeah.
if you're watching like a New York movie, like we talked about, it's about the collective. Like I get emotional when I'm watching, even though I've never been to New York, don't know the culture. When the New Yorkers band together, it makes me kind of emotional.
Yeah.
Like watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah.
When the New Yorkers helped the
Yo,
Turtles, I was
that's
like,
true.
I was kind of like, what the hell? I'm not even like a Turtles fan. I'm like tearing up here.
It
So-
also manifests in, like, in my opinion, in individuals' approaches to their environments.
Yeah.
Where personally, a lot of the time I was in LA, I felt like people treat you kind of how they do traffic, where, like,
Humans
especially
are
in the
cars.
industry, it's real.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Oh, you're in my way, so I hope you they want you to succeed, but not more than them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they view it as, oh, you're in the way of me getting to where I want to go.
Yeah.
Where in New York, it's like, I don't care if you succeed or not. Get on or get off, we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of people, it depends on, obviously there are pockets of people who are changed, but you see the city impact people based on their perspective on life.
No, absolutely. And I think especially like New York, I'm thinking of like New York versus LA movies, and I think New York movies, I associate them with like Martin Scorsese's films from like the 70s and 80s. Like,
Yeah.
there's a grime. And especially that era of New York, because New York was
It's a bad place.
It was a bad place in the 70s and 80s. It was like a filthy, really rough place, and I think Scorsese came in at a good time and kind of depicted that. And there's a lot of movies you could bring up. You could bring up Taxi Driver. You could bring up Mean Streets. But I think one that really captures it is After Hours. Have you seen that one?
Not yet, no.
Oh, man, Mr. New York
It's
over here. You got to
crazy.
see After
I know.
Hours. Essentially what it is, it's a one crazy night movie about this guy. Simple premise. This guy, and he's just trying to track down a girl that he likes. Works are like a really like boring job, and it takes place over one night, and he just gets into these really like surreal misadventures in like New York nighttime 1980s. And like that to me, like I feel like you can't make a movie like that in LA.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's
LA
true.
doesn't have that same
That density. Yeah.
density and like almost like I
You
don't
don't
think
know
LA,
what's around next
LA isn't
corner.
as scary as New York.
Until you go on the subway here. The subway here is scary.
The Metro, you
It's
think?
like the 70s down there.
Really?
Yeah.
I will say
No, that's just LA. LA is like
Nah,
the
it's
last 30
especially
years didn't
down there.
have it.
I don't know if you guys have gone recently, but like
Yeah.
at least one person dies every day down there.
the Metro.
It's terrifying.
The Metro definitely like I don't think because it's not as widely used as in the population here as it is in New York. I don't think there's as much upkeep or attention kept to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why. But I don't know. I just know that like New York, just you have these really tall buildings that loom over you, and it's almost like monstrous. And it's just everything's so grand. Versus LA,
It's spread.
it's a lot more spread out.
Yeah.
You can kind of see the vista if you reach a high enough point. And in New York, you don't really have that. There's a lot of like really dark alleys. So I think with that thematically, with the films that take place in New York, you can kind of go to darker places than you could necessarily in LA.
Yeah, there's I'm glad you brought up After Hours because another movie that kind of has a similar sensibility is the Safdie brothers movie Good Time, which also takes place.
I
in
was
New
going to
York.
bring up Uncut Gems.
They're
but
both
yeah,
of those.
Safdie brothers in New York. Yes.
Yeah, and they both
absolutely.
lean into that kind of grungy.
What is the plot of Good Time? I've actually never seen it.
So
What?
Benny
I haven't seen it.
Safdie
Same.
and Robert
What?
Pattinson. It's really good.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I think it actually might be my favorite of their movies. But basically, Benny Safdie and Robert Pattinson, the opening scene is they rob a bank. Job goes real bad. They're on the
Okay.
run. That's it.
That sounds like a Safdie brothers premise.
Yeah, and it's just crazy shit. It's like it's just as anxiety inducing as Uncut Gems.
There are like, you know how like in LA there are characters, but I feel like in New York it's like because of I don't know if it's how condensed everything is or if like because there's like boroughs, right? And like in LA there are like little pockets like but everybody generally feels like sort of similar in like their goals and ideologies and like what they like and whatnot. Whereas like in New York it feels like around every corner somebody has a different opinion about something else. And in Good Time you run into these like strange characters just like in After Hours where it's like you don't know who you're going to run into like right around the corner because they're absurd. They've got like a specific niche interest. They could be like high art. They could be like homeless. It's like anything. And in Good Time, that's the case as well. Is like he runs into like a person who's like a security guard at a amusement park. He runs into like a drug dealer. There's like a lot of different people. It's crazy.
Have you seen their debut film, by the way? The Safdie brothers?
No,
I
I
haven't.
haven't.
What's that?
I think it's called Heaven Knows What. Yeah, Heaven Knows What.
Heaven knows what.
But it's starring it has Caleb Landry in it, and I forget the main actress, but that one's like a tough look at New York.
Yeah.
It's just like a drug addict trying to survive, and
Damn.
they filmed it for really cheap. But if you're looking for like an on the ground story in New York that shows how tough it is just to be alive,
Yeah.
that one's full of unique characters and
are
some
you
crazy
gonna-
stuff happens.
What are you going to dive into?
I have one New York movie that none of you guys have seen. That only Ethan and I have seen because I have the Criterion over there. It's Sean Baker's film called Takeout.
Oh, okay. I've been
it's-
wanting to watch it.
It's very low budget. I like everything was guerrilla. Probably made for like $1,000 maybe. I don't know. It all just looks like they just picked up a camera and went.
Yeah.
The basic premise of the movie, it's about a Chinese immigrant in New York who he owes money, and he has till the end of the day to pay it back. Otherwise, he's gonna get beat up and all this horrible shit. The movie is about him going about it, and he's a delivery food guy, and it's about him like meeting all these characters and trying to build up, the money and the tips and all that. But at the end of the day, the movie is really about like all of the people that he meets in New York, and like the kindness that you'll feel in like the surprising kindness you'll feel surrounded by people who like don't really know you but are willing to help out, in small ways where they can.
I think
it's like, it captures the spirit really well.
I think, Jack, you told me once that New Yorkers they're not kind but they're nice, but LA people are kind but not nice. Wait, how does it go again?
I said LA people are nice but not kind.
Yeah.
And New Yorkers are the opposite. They're kind but they're not nice. Where nice is, I'll hand you a tissue. Oh, it'll be okay. Like
Open the door for
whatever.
you, shit like that.
New Yorkers will be like, here's a tissue. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me that's like nice is very like passive and kind is very sometimes aggressive.
But
So
it's
New
like
Yorkers-
tough love that's like sometimes needed.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think also like, I mean, the comps you guys just brought up about New York, about the Safdie brothers and all that stuff. I think the big thing, and Jack, you could probably speak to this better than anybody, is the pace of each city.
Absolutely.
New York sounds like a stressful place to live.
It is.
Very stressful. It's very fast paced. And LA life, like there's such thing as LA time, where everything is everybody's late always. There's no such thing as being on time in LA. Like it just doesn't happen, whether it's traffic or it's just a state of mind. But I don't know. Like you've lived in both cities at this point. Like, do you have any experiences with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say LA time because like New Yorkers are always late all the time. Every day it's like, oh, I'm late to work because somebody pushed a shopping cart in front of the train and everyone was late.
But
So,
like you're still rushing.
It's still
though.
chaos.
But you can still be late, but you're still rushing.
yeah, it's nonstop. And I feel like it's like a sidewalk thing where you can tell someone's not from New York or it has like a New York mindset because they're enjoying their walk. Where New Yorkers are like, I'm trying to
They're
get
bustling.
everywhere the fastest I possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when you see someone like speed by you when they're driving to get to the same red light. Like you pull up and you're both there and you're like,
What was that for?
why'd you speed up?
Yeah.
But New Yorkers have a very unique sense of time where it's truthfully the reason why I need to escape sometimes, because you spend so long in the city that like you go to your hometown or you go to LA and you're like, wow, life can exist without having to get everywhere the fastest you possibly need to.
Right.
Which to go along with what you said about the space in LA, that's the reason I love LA the most. It's because of this space and you can kind of breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
You can observe a little bit more than
But that
being observed 24/7.
there's like stuff that lends itself to like cinema in that the congested nature allows for like sort of a pressure cooker like environment.
Totally.
Like I really like the movie Phone Booth, which is set in one phone booth, and it's like a
Oh, it's like a sniper's hole.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like it's on like a crowded city street, and it's like right near Times Square.
Yeah.
There's like lots of, like I said, lots of different characters and stuff. But that holds you like your attention, and I don't think you could ever do something like that in LA with like because there are high rises in downtown, but that's like basically it. Like
That's it.
there's not really like the same environment elsewhere in the city.
And it's so spread out. And I think like I'd be remiss. Ethan's not here this week. He would definitely be remiss if I didn't bring this movie up. But a great movie that captures that LA mindset is The Big Lebowski.
Big
Hell
Lebowski.
Is The Big Lebowski. That is literally what the mindset of LA is like, where it's very transient. It's very like you're just kind of floating through existence.
Yeah.
And it's
Like a tumbleweed.
Exactly. That's the big symbolism of that film. And it's just, I think that film really captures what people are like in LA.
No, yeah, it's because it's like that's like the trope is like the slacker, but like like the mentality in LA is that you life goes on and you go along with it.
You're going to be
And
stuck in traffic either way.
You may as well enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be that way.
Yeah.
So just try and enjoy yourself.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you
I was also going to say, like, it's funny the weird stuff that happens in The Big Lebowski will happen in LA, and you'd be like, oh, that's so weird. That's so LA. It's the same exact way in New York. That's one
Really?
thing that both cities have in common
They're
is a
weird-
weird stuff is
weird
going to
shit
happen on your
happens.
front door, and you kind of just have to go like,
Okay.
well, that's the city.
Yeah, that's what the cost
no
of living here
matter
is
where
like.
you are. I don't think other cities can say that. Like, there's no Boston movies I know of, or no San Francisco movies that you walk outside and a crackhead is jerking off while doing drugs. And you're like, oh, that's crazy.
The funny thing is that happens in San Francisco, but I feel like
I'm sure.
a movie doesn't. There hasn't been a San Francisco movie that's really captured that though.
No.
It doesn't have as much of a, I guess that defining personality trait.
One of the things I think people don't talk about enough is the way that each city kind of impacts the way that you dream about your careers. I feel like if in La La Land, for example, the dreams are these very like big ideologies, and it's all around you. Like, you live in Burbank, you can drive past the Warner Bros. You live LA, you live the culture, and every sunset reminds you of the movies. And it's like a really cool thing because you're just constantly hit with inspiration. But in New York, it's very different, where one analogy I really like is the idea of the city kind of being like, if Manhattan is your dreams, there's like these peaks, all the skylights, the bright lights, Broadway, all these things. But it's really hard because then you have to leave. And every day, if you're in your rooftop in Queens or Brooklyn or wherever you are, the dream, you can see the lifestyle is changing. So in my opinion, I feel like viewing your dreams is different than when you're in it. Because you get to LA and you're like, wow, I'm surrounded by Hollywood. I'm an assistant. It's kind of gradual. Yeah. And in New York, as soon as you get your dreams, it's like, this is chaotic. Everyone wants something from you. It changes the way that you view them, where I think it's easier to dream in LA than it is in New York. Because you get it and realize you still have to deal with all those shitty things.
It feels like maybe the chase in LA is maybe a little easier to endure.
Yeah.
Because we were discussing about the slower pace. And like you brought up, like my old apartment was literally, I could see the Warner Brothers water tower from my bedroom window. And that, as someone who's dreamt of like getting into movies my entire life, that was really inspiring to me. And it still is. It's still really cool. Like when I have friends from out of town to come visit and we drive by all the lots, like we take them by Disney and Warner Brothers and Universal. And it's like, yeah, this stuff is like all within like 10 minutes of me. And like, that's really cool. So I do agree with what you're saying. And I'm even thinking of like, are there any New York movies you guys can think of that are like about chasing dreams? Because we talked about like La La Land, we talked about like that aspect, but what's like a good New York movie about chasing dreams?
Do you want a positive vision of a dream or a negative version?
Give me both. Give me the good and the bad.
August Rush. No.
August Rush. Oh wow.
Okay. The good one.
$5
All right, this is a
bin at
movie.
Walmart.
This is my last movie that none of you guys have seen.
Okay.
It's this movie called An Autumn's Tale. It was made in 1987.
An Autumn's Tale.
It stars Chow Yun-fat, who you know, and another actress whose name is evading me. Basically, the story is a guy. He lives in New York. He's been here for a little while, but he's an immigrant, and his someone who's close to him. I forget their relationship, but she comes and he takes care of her, and the whole film kind of revolves around this idea of these two people leaving their homes and immigrating here and wanting to pursue like a simple dream. And for him, his dream was to open a small little restaurant by the water, and that's it. And that was like a very positive vision of New York and the dream. The negative is The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh boy, yes.
Because boy, did he pursue that dream, and did he do it?
Oh my God. I mean, Wall Street is like such a culture that's in New York, and we talk about that hustle culture, that fast-paced, like
snort coke and go.
It is like, yes, just a cocaine-fueled ride, and I think that movie captures that very well, but also captures like how that easily leads to corruption and like everything that's wrong with capitalism can be found on that one street in New York City. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. It's also interesting looking at the city's landscape, where you said LA is very widespread and very like not as tall, but it's very long.
Yeah.
New York is very high and very short.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I feel like chasing your dreams, movies often say like, oh, it's so gradual, it's going to happen. It's really far out of reach.
Yeah.
In New York, it's like you take one subway, you're there.
Yeah.
So to me, it's interesting to put you into the lifestyle. And if anyone here is watching this and you are dreaming of these big careers alongside all of us, I feel like each city has a warning of like, oh, it's gonna happen sooner than you think, but also enjoy the part where you're at.
Yeah.
Like if you're stuck in traffic, don't be mad that you're stuck in traffic. Just appreciate that you're in line.
Where I
that you're
think
on your way.
that matches a lot is a positive dream, and that's Larry Daly's in the Night at the Museum trilogy.
Night at the Museum.
wow.
Here,
Love that.
Let me explain myself, okay? Because he
Please
never
do.
wanted to be a night guard at the
No.
Natural History Museum.
But he has to.
But he has to for his son. And the thing is he's an inventor. He invented the snapper, you know?
Hell yeah.
Ben Stiller.
That's right. Oh man.
And
I
he was
remember
trying to
that now.
chase his dream as an entrepreneur, but he found a new dream in like engaging the youth in nightly activities at the museum.
Another New York movie that's more
New York
about
movie?
contributing to the community as opposed to like your own personal ambition.
Exactly.
It's about like preserving this like
It's the
local
public.
hub.
It's the public library.
Yeah.
Or not the library, but the public museum. You know, and I think that's a really inspiring sort of thing that you can take from it, even though it's like a kids movie and stuff like that.
Sure,
but it realizes things like the boroughs in New York that we were talking about. Like they talk about Queens, they talk about the Bronx and stuff like that. Like you're there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
They Came Together is another one.
I think
need to shout that out for Ethan.
Another thing about New York versus LA is I feel like New York movies, they can go dark, but also there's a lot of romance. New York's an incredibly romantic city, and I got to bring up When Harry Met Sally, which is one of
Love it.
Yeah.
my
course.
favorite romantic comedy of all time.
Probably like
and,
the romantic comedy.
and it's also like in terms of like just purely positive and like I think that movie shows the best parts of New York and how beautiful that city can be and how that is like a perfect backdrop for falling in love
During
and
all
finding your
seasons.
forever person. Yes, exactly. Because in LA we don't get seasons. We don't.
It's spring.
It's
summer.
It's pretty much that. And then, well, these past few years we've gotten like some really heavy rainfall out of nowhere, and this city falls apart in the rain.
It does. It really does.
And LA drivers do not know how to drive in the rain. The streets flood after like 5 minutes. It's just absolute pandemonium.
Yeah.
Like this city cannot handle rain.
For anyone who needs to know, I don't know why you would, but avoid North Hollywood at all costs when you're driving.
Anywhere in the valley.
Yeah, it is bad in the valley when it rains. It is horrible.
It's funny to think about disaster movies for New York versus LA too, because New Yorkers, it's like Independence Day, like everything's going wrong. There's aliens. LA, a disaster movie would be like, we got rain.
we got rain.
Yeah, we got
Earthquake
rain.
and rain.
Earthquake and rain. You got Dwayne Johnson in every movie.
San Andreas.
Yep.
Man, and it's funny. Okay, I'm gonna bring up LA story again because I just watched this movie today as research for this pod. There's a scene where they're all out at dinner, and like an earthquake hits, and literally they're just continuing the conversation as like a 7-point earthquake is happening, and like the table's like moving away from them, and they're like scooting their chairs, but like they still got to talk about their latest Botox procedure, you know? Like they can't.
That's very
yeah,
LA.
and they're just like, and the London person's like, "What's happening?" And it's like, "Oh, it's an earthquake." You know, it's just an earthquake. So, but yeah, I think going back to New York being this like city of romance, and then also another movie it's called Sleepless in Seattle. It takes place mostly in Seattle, but the climax happens in New York on the Empire State Building.
Yawn.
And I think
No.
what?
No.
Oh no, I think that's
All the
such a
Tom
sweet movie.
Hanks romantic comedies are like. Mid.
You don't like
You've Got
Mail?
You've Got Mail's iconic.
No.
What?
You can't shit on it.
No.
Wait, what city does that take place in?
New York.
New York City.
Is that a New York City
Yeah, it's
movie?
in New
You've Got
York.
Mail.
Like I said,
Got Mail?
the Nora
It's a remake.
Ephron
bad
romance movies
Shop
that
Around
take
the
place
Corner.
in New York. You know, like I don't know. I think New York is a perfect backdrop for romance. And then
I don't disagree.
And the one example I think of for LA is La La Land, and that romance, at least the central romance of that movie, doesn't work out. And I think that's interesting.
It's your opinion.
I think it's easier for people to.
He's like, that's just
What do you
your
mean
opinion,
it's,
man.
It's my opinion. Whoa, okay. What's
Did you see
happening?
Pretty Woman?
Pretty Woman? I haven't seen Pretty Woman. Oh boy, is that a
God damn
blind
it.
spot?
Yeah, it's a blind spot.
I've
man.
never felt like the urge to watch.
You
Pretty
should.
Woman.
It captures that city atmosphere.
Is that an LA movie?
Yeah, it is.
Interesting.
Watch me make a fool of myself. and
You
it's
know what
not.
I would
It
say is probably for me at least, the LA movie.
What?
Among many. There are many LA movies, but to me, the one that captures it the best is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
You're
Yeah.
I
telling
think
me.
that movie, it just paints it so like perfectly. All of like all the aspirations of the characters and everything like that. But more importantly, the vibe is perfectly captured.
Yeah.
The hangout vibe. Like, you spend like maybe 10 to 15 minutes just watching Leo and Brad Pitt watch a movie. And it's
That's
great.
part of the culture, man. It's incredible, like,
a
how
movie
much
town.
film is just, it is so ingrained in the culture. Like, everyone who lives here, even if they don't work in film, they still go to the movies, like, all the time.
Yeah, people in LA fucking love movies.
They do. And I
mean, go
mean,
figure,
because
right?
it's like, yeah, it's movie town. But
Movie time.
that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has slowly become one of my favorite movies of all time. And a big part of it is because I'm such a true crime fan, and that movie's all about, like, the Manson murders. And I read the book Helter Skelter, which is all about that, and, like, the counterculture movement. This was such a crazy place for that to happen because LA's always been about that. It's always been about, like, experimentation and about, like, defying social norms. And, like, that's why such, like, terrible things can happen here, is because minds can be corrupted so easily.
Would you say New York or LA has more cults? I'd probably say LA, to be honest.
LA.
Yeah.
LA, I mean, Scientology. Is there Scientology in New York?
It probably is.
I'm
Is
sure
there?
there is, but
Is
like,
there?
I feel like LA is like the hub.
There's, like, I feel like 5 Scientology centers in LA.
Yeah, there's
And that's
a
a
lot
cult.
in LA. Everyone watching the Olivia, I'm Olivia's girlfriend. The Olivia off screen says there's more in LA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's more in LA, but there aren't.
But there are some in New York.
I think it makes sense because in LA, there's, like, a constant need. Like, we're talking about how, like, LA, like, the culture is a lot more focused on self. And I think
Validation, affirmation.
exactly where it's like I feel like it's easy to be, like, in LA, like, when it's all about yourself, you're constantly thinking of, like, what can I do to become better? But, like, not only that, but, like, better than other people. And I think that little sense of narcissism is what the cults feed into.
Plus, in New York, it's like we don't have time for cults. We got the Mets.
Yeah, you got the
Yeah,
Mets to
and
the
deal with.
Knicks.
Yeah,
But, like, I
they got
think-
they got a
the
constant
Knicks.
team to disappoint them.
Is
That's
it-
their cults.
Is it fair to say that it's like once you get to New York, though, you're humbled very quickly?
Very quickly.
And I think that's why, like, cults can't really necessarily exist as well in New York as they do in LA.
Also, the bullshit radar meter. Like
Yeah.
in LA, people have like if you have it, you have it. But in general, I feel like you take someone from New York, you drop in LA, they're gonna call out all the weird stuff.
Yeah.
You drop someone from LA in New York,
They're gonna
and
fall for
everyone's
shit.
gonna be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Like we know you don't know what you're doing, so stop wasting my time.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I've heard the saying that like in Miami it's about money, in LA it's about clout, and in New York it's about power. And I think that's
100%.
very true. And
Succession.
Yeah, Succession. And then you think about movies like The Godfather and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great New York movie.
yeah, that's one of the best.
Yeah.
Which-
There's also, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but Godfather being about a family or a business that turns into a family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then interesting that Godfather 2 gets a little bit further away from New York and starts showing like L.A., Nevada, Utah, more places.
Don't
but
they go to Vegas in the second one?
Vegas?
Yeah.
I connect
Um,
more with Godfather 2.
And then turns from
Because they go to the
family into a business again.
Yeah.
They
So
go west.
yeah, New York is very, very family centered. I feel like it's well
There's
rounded.
also, another movie that I feel like we cannot forget to at least just mention for New York is Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing. Yes,
Spike Lee,
I have that on my
the,
list.
The man.
It's I think New York is just this ginormous cultural melting pot. And like you were saying, Jack, it's a very densely packed city where everything is so close together that I think it's easy for tensions to arise, especially racial tensions and cultural tensions.
Yeah.
And I think that Do the Right Thing is like a masterpiece in depicting that and how like easily like just because people are so close in proximity and with the heat of the summer, it's the hottest day in New York of that year, how that serves as a perfect backdrop for like how racial tensions can arise. I think do the right thing is I had that on my list. I'm glad you brought it up because that to me is also like one of the quintessential depictions of New York City.
I think LA is like not necessarily homogenized, it's also diverse, it's many backgrounds. Like my quintessential LA movie is one we watched for a movie night recently.
I know.
Summertime.
Oh yeah.
The slam poetry.
It's a
movie.
slam poetry
Shout out
movie.
to Chapman alum Carlos
Carlos
Lopez
Lopez
Estrada for
for
directing
directing
that one.
Yeah.
All right, go Panthers.
Chapman does you dirty by not talking about you.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
You have 4 movies. let's talk about at least two of them. Anyway, it's really great at just depicting like the day-to-day lives of all these different like slam poets. I mean, obviously it's like intrinsic and diegetic to the movie that they're actually doing the poetry, but I think it's really interesting to see like the multiple ways people get around, like the people succeeding at their dreams and failing at their dreams, but also like the cathartic. It's cathartic because it's like all these like minimum wage workers or like just like family people, like they're the type of people who are not necessarily the ones succeeding in Hollywood. It's always the more grounded stories.
Everyday
person.
Like
the everyday person in LA. And I feel like we don't highlight that enough because, you know, we do see that a lot in New York movies, I think, of regular people. You say that in the romances and such. But in LA, it's like...
We're always watching like the stars rising.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that.
That's
but,
true.
Yeah, it's quite rare that we get like just a dude. Like, The Big Lebowski is about just a dude, you know? I know you're not the biggest fan of that movie, but yeah, it does capture that.
It's not funny.
Well, also, like, look at the culture. LA has so many billboards, especially like look at award season.
For
every billboard,
for your considerations.
Yeah.
Yes.
The last
everywhere.
repair shop.
every single place
Still
you
there.
go,
It's still up.
it's about the industry and
It
about
is.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
But you go in
can't
New York,
escape it.
it's equally as much about entertainment as it is about news or business
Yeah.
or fashion.
It's like they're all intrinsically linked.
Yeah, everything matters, so nothing matters at the same
Yeah.
time.
Nihilism.
So
We
I
love
feel like
that.
in New York, if you find your pockets, it's a little bit easier to like feel more like, oh well, I have my thing, and even if it's
Yeah.
different than your thing, that's okay. Where in LA, everyone's a writer, director, producer.
What I really want to do is direct.
Yeah, what I really want to do, and then someone in New York would be like, so what do you actually do? They're like,
Yeah.
I work at Starbucks.
Yeah.
In New York, it's well, this is what I do on the side. I don't care if you like me or not. This is what I do.
That's a really good point. I've never thought about that because as I've like, you know, struggled to pursue, you know, my dream of, you know, what I really want to do is direct. I've never noticed that part of it is because in LA, everybody is like focused on this community, on this industry in one way or another. Sure, there's like different industries within there, but like LA is like that is the identity of the city.
Movie town.
It is movie town, but in New York, like you were saying, it is easier to maybe find your niche and to be comfortable there because you know you're a part of something bigger where like all these industries are doing their own thing in the same place.
Plus, I think, truthfully, LA values perception more than actuality. Where in New
No,
York, I think the value is, here's what I've actually done. Here's what
Yeah.
I'm doing. Here's
Yeah.
what I'm working
No,
on.
I see that.
Where in LA, I feel like it's, oh, well, I
you
want
present
people to
yourself-
think about me as a multi-hyphenate. Where in New York, they're like, show me something.
Yeah, it's like
It's hard.
In LA, it's all about like how you're perceived and how you present yourself. When New York, it's like if it's on the resume, it's on the resume. You know.
Which goes back to the La La Land effect.
Yeah.
It's not the real Los Angeles, it's the perceived Los Angeles versus New York version, which would be interesting to see. I'd be very interested
Yeah,
to see a love story kind of in that classical sense in New York.
That would be okay. Let's talk about like for our own personal, like what are our own personal favorite depictions of each city? And Jack, I'm interested to hear you because you've lived in both cities.
Yeah.
Like for you, like what are the movies that capture the essence the best based on your own experience?
Norma the North,
Norm of the North.
Yes.
Let's go.
It's so good. The third one.
the third one. Just
2.5
such a great
stars.
New York movie. No, I feel like, and this is gonna be my hot take. So I live in New York, but I personally like LA movies better than New York movies.
I feel the
Interesting.
I think New
opposite.
York has more iconic hits. I think it has better, more movies that are better. But LA's movies like The Big Lebowski or La La Land or the Nice Guys, which
Nice
deserves
Guys.
a sequel.
Fantastic.
But in my opinion, I feel like LA movies tend to have a little bit more fun, and they tend to be more like comedies, or they go places where a lot of New York movies, like you take Taxi Driver for an example, it's a great character study, but you're in Manhattan the whole time, or you're in New York City.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's more
living in New
cynical.
York,
Yeah.
it's, and maybe this will change if I move back to LA, but
Yeah.
I think for right now, I kind of view LA movies as like an escape, where
That's
you
true.
can't escape in New York
No.
unless you leave. So that's my personal take. I feel like it depends on what movie you watch, of course, but New York, I don't want to watch New York movies because I just walk outside and you see it.
Really, I guess like when you live there, it definitely changes that romanticism that you
100%.
see in a lot of those movies. Like for me, I want to wear a white sweater like Billy Crystal in When Harry Met Sally and walk in like the leaves in Central Park. Like that's my vision of that city because I've only been there as like a tourist, as a visitor.
Yeah.
But I think when you're living there, when you're in the thick of it, that romanticism begins to fade, and it's almost like, oh man, I can't take this anymore because it's just my daily life, and I know I can see where reality ends and fiction begins.
Well, you watch a movie with loud neighbors, and you're like, is that actually my neighbors, or is that the movie?
Yeah,
It's
right?
like, oh, I,
As someone who lives in neither city and doesn't romanticize either, I'm fine watching both.
You're fine. Okay. All right. Sure.
Yeah,
Well, like go into it though. Like, what are some of your favorite LA and New York movies?
I mean, obviously, I mentioned Summertime is one of my favorite depictions of LA.
I think it is.
I think it's just
I
like
would
so
agree with that.
authentic, even outside of the slam poetry presentation of it all. Recently, I would say A Real Women Have Curves. I think is like a really
Excellent.
good
So
America
example of
Ferrera.
that. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's just like it's like producing that like diverse picture of like immigrant. Oh, El Norte is another one, and they're not always there, but in El Norte, it's like they go to like San Diego, they go to like. I know that's not near here, but it's about like immigration, and I think that's a really important part of LA. Not saying that it's not an important part of New York. I mean, that's intrinsic to its history
huge.
with Ellis Island, but it's different kinds of immigrants, you know. For New York, I think there's a wider variety in terms of like films. Like I would disagree that there's not fun movies in New York because like After Hours
Totally.
exists.
Stuart Little,
still-
Stuart
Yeah,
Little 2.
exactly.
Home
Yeah,
Alone
yeah.
2.
After
Alone
Hours
2.
is fun, but it's still like
Serious,
definitely
yeah.
it's still like kind of creepy and like intense.
Stuart
Maybe
Little
for
3.
you.
What? That's like literally
No.
the purpose of that movie. It's
No.
about like existentialism during the Reagan era.
Well, that's your fault for interpreting it like that.
Okay. Wow. We're just,
But
shots.
for
Well,
New
that's
York,
that's just your opinion.
there's
I
just so
guess.
many. I mean, like Stranger Than Fiction is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, talk about Stranger Than Fiction because
Yeah.
this is kind of a little unknown gem. What's like the
Unknown.
basic premise?
Okay, so it's about this guy who's like he wakes up.
Will
one
Ferrell.
Yeah, Will Ferrell. He wakes up one morning and he finds that his whole life is being narrated for him, and that there's a famous author in New York that says he's going to die at the end of this story. And it's like sees him going through his everyday life in New York, like Jack was describing, which is like very like go go go. I don't have time for anybody else, and it's like alters his perception on life. And I love movies like that,
Oh, that's
where it's
great.
like and will eventually maybe show up for a movie night. But I think it shows a different side of New York. It's a lot brighter than something like After Hours, like we talked about, or Taxi Driver, New York, or King of Comedy, if we're going to name all the Scorsese
Oh
New
man,
York
King of
movies.
Comedy. I watched that one recently, and man, that is like such a hard movie, and it made me like I'm just gonna say it. It made me hate Joker so much. Joker just took that movie, slapped a DC IP on it, and then got 11 Oscar nominations and $1 billion at the box office.
Also,
Whack.
like I said earlier, they came together.
They
It's
came together.
so
David
fun.
Wayne
It's
so fun.
parody of romantic comedies, and even
New York's just a character. in
New
this
York's a character.
character.
It is a character in this story,
and their love story. Yeah,
they do play on that trope a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's ingenious.
Also, from a production side, like I think it's easier to write a movie in New York than is in LA because New York gives you so many things to play around with.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think like we were saying, like there's just like just the nature of that city and how it does become a character in the story. It plays into a lot of thematics that you can explore. Where LA, like the reason it became movie town is that you can kind of disguise it as anywhere. Like there's a lot of most movies are made in LA. That doesn't make them LA movies.
Yeah.
Because that's like the city isn't necessarily always the focus of the story. When like a movie, if you shoot it in New York, you can't help but see that city.
I don't
Like,
know.
It has to become part of
It's
it.
got a
Hot take
little bit of
incoming.
history comparatively.
Okay,
like,
what's
I feel like LA, even though it's like technically got the longer history, I think New York is like it's built like you see movies filmed in New York from like the 60s, 70s, even before that. But in LA, it's like can't really tell. Like like the first LA movie I can remember is probably like a science fiction movie rather than an actual like movie set in LA. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't know, not really too much of a hot take, but
I guess.
I think one of the most iconic, and I'm sure you guys will either agree or heavy disagree, but we talked about it a little bit with Night at the Museum. I'd put Ben Stiller up there as one of the top New York City storytellers.
definitely. Yeah, that guy-
Talking about Secret
Yeah.
Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh,
One of the most iconic
yeah.
New York City movies that
I
goes
completely
other places.
forgot about that.
But
Yeah.
to me, I feel like I'd put him up there with Scorsese, where Ben Stiller has had a lot of trash, but He's
Zoolander.
laughing.
Zoolander is a New York movie.
Zoolander
They had to
is a New York
digitally
movie.
remove because they shot that, and then the movie came out like a week after 9/11. And like they had,
9/11
but the movie
movies.
was already filmed, and they had to
Let's
like
talk
do
about
some last minute.
Well, that gets back into like the community aspect of New York, like New York banding together. That was like a huge thing after 9/11. Like
Yeah.
people talk about that. That's where the community element, and that's why Spider-Man 2 works like so well. Like it came out like right after 9/11.
I think Spider-Man and I think the whole Raimi trilogy, you can analyze that as like a post 9/11 like coping. Like you could view those from that
Yeah.
angle.
Of course.
How about you, Chris? What are some of your favorite LA and New York movies?
LA. Okay. I'm just gonna spit some out because I have a list and we're not gonna be able to get through all of them. I'm just gonna throw out a couple. I got Pulp Fiction, Bowfinger, by the way. You showed
Bowfinger.
Bowfinger a little
Iconic.
while. That is a very funny
Iconic.
movie.
Bowfinger
Yeah.
is one of my
It's just
favorite.
like
Bowfungers?
people making movies and just like whatever.
The craziness of making movies and the lengths people will go
Even for like the simplest of things. Yeah.
to find success in this insane industry.
Speaking of the lengths you'll go to find success in the industry, Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, yes,
That is
that's a
that's
huge
a messed
LA
up one.
movie.
And I think maybe the last two for LA that I'll throw in is Straight Outta Compton. It's a great movie about NWA, their rise and
Yeah.
their eventual fallout. And last one I want to throw out. This is not many people talk about this one, even though it is one of the biggest franchises in the world because it started as an LA movie. The first Fast and Furious
and
movie
Furious.
is a deep LA movie.
It is.
It is extremely close to LA. It captures the diaspora. It captures the community of LA and like the diversity within that, and also just like, I mean, that's one thing. Maybe it's a little more common in LA than New York is racing, because
There's no room to
there's
race
no race
in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget about it, cuz.
And for New York, we've talked about all of the big ones for me already. Maybe the only one I'll throw in now is Home Alone 2. For me, like, because
Home Alone 2.
I've only been to New York like twice in my life, and they were both like when I was like a teenager. So like I kind of went into those cities in the same mentality like Kevin McAllister had, where it's like, holy shit, look at all this stuff. And like I remember like when I would watch Home Alone 2 to this day, the scene where he gets in that limo and gets the fucking pizza. I used to
Iconic.
think of that as like, that is like, if I were a
Extra-large
billionaire,
cheese pizza
I would do that. I'm
just
like,
for
billionaire?
me.
and I'm like, that was the height of luxury.
I think
for
you
me.
could probably do that for like $700.
No, you probably could. But it's like, at the time, I was like, oh man, that's the height of luxury right there.
Mm-hmm.
A fresh cheese pizza just for me.
Nice. So Home Alone 2. I mean, that's like another movie where I feel like something about New York movies is I feel like there's a lot more like very recognizable, like worldwide recognizable landmarks in New York. You have the Statue of Liberty, you have the Empire State Building. I mean, pre-2001, you had the Twin Towers. That was a hugely recognizable landmark amongst the skyline. And like in LA, the skyline is pretty devoid of
Other than the U.S.
personality.
Bank building.
Yeah, right. The Maze Bank in GTA
Shout
5.
out. Okay, but I don't know. Like the LA skyline is just kind of a bunch of random buildings together. Like I don't know what any of them are called.
See, well, yeah, that's the thing. It's
We
like
just know that one.
it's
oh,
the
pier. We know the pier. People know
Sure,
the pier.
yeah, I mean, but
roller
like,
coaster?
I mean, like
Shitty roller coaster?
worldwide recognition. Like, yeah, sure, us who live here know what this stuff is, and if you play GTA, but like New York, it's like people come from around the world to look at this stuff.
That's another interesting thing, as we've been talking about the differences between New York and LA. New York, you see the skyline as it is.
Yeah.
In LA, you see it as they put it together. They string together the Hollywood sign, Griffith,
That's
the Walk
true.
of Fame. So it's
They're
the
so far away from each other too.
Yeah,
perception versus reality.
Exactly,
It's that same
exactly.
thing throughout.
I'm more starstruck by the people of LA and the landmarks.
You're so wholesome.
Of,
Oh, look at you. What do you love about the people of LA? Let's shout out the Angelinos.
I don't have anything nice to say.
What you just said that you just said that you were inspired by that.
Oh
Right.
no, I mean the celebrities. Come on, we just see them walking
give
on the
me a
street.
break.
Come on, man.
Yeah, they're just walking. If you don't live in LA, if you just go to downtown Hollywood,
You
they're
could.
everywhere. They're just walking
they
down the
are.
street. Go say hi. You can
could
meet
say hi to
Zac Efron.
Batman.
You
You
can say
could
hi to
say-
Dana Carvey. You can say hi to David Spade. You can see
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. He's
Michael
there.
Jackson.
Michael
His
Jackson
resting
and
place.
OJ just chilling on your sidewalk.
They really are. You can take a picture with them.
You got to pay $5 after, but
Yeah, but they've been
But
in
the
hard
glove didn't fit,
times.
so.
Yeah, no, so absolutely celebrities. Yeah, but there's celebrities in New York too. A lot of those celebrities are in New York
Ben
as
Stiller.
well.
it's
Ben
over.
Stiller? Really nice
There's
guy.
a Ben
by the
Stiller
way.
photo op. Right
Really
now,
nice
right
guy.
in Times
Jack and I
Square.
did meet Ben Stiller when we
Fantastic
were in LA.
dude.
Not in LA, in New York.
Wow.
And he's a really
Fucked
cool
it up.
guy. Really, really down to earth person.
I should also say if it should be mentioned that all the difference between creators in New York and LA, like creating for the internet, in regards of like trying to make it your career, it's been interesting to watch people like Kyle Mooney grow up in LA off of sketch comedy.
He's a huge West Coaster, but then he made the
Huge West
transition with SNL. Yeah.
Mhm. So it's cool to see, as you talked about earlier about stars rising. It's interesting to see the different paths people take when they're in New York, like Donald Glover blowing up and getting on 30 Rock and then moving out to do Community. It's kind of cool to see the difference between people growing up, or not growing up, but like blowing up in LA versus New York.
That's true.
I feel like you can see the difference in longevity.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, some favorite New York City movies I want to shout out. Have you guys seen The Devil Wears Prada?
I just watched it for the first time.
Not for a while, but
I think
Fantastic
that-
movie.
I think because you've been bringing up a lot about like pursuing a career in each of these cities, and I think that captures the like when you're in New York and you're pursuing your career. That's kind of it takes over your life. And it like,
100%.
and that's what that movie's about. Anne Hathaway takes a job at this very prestigious fashion company run by Meryl Streep, one of her best performances. And it becomes her whole life where she grows distant from her college friends. Like she just graduated college and she starts to lose touch with her old self because she just gets pushed on this path and it's 100 miles per hour. And I feel like that's not necessarily, like you were saying with LA, it's a lot more of a gradual growth.
Yeah, which by the way, they're bad friends in the movie.
They get mad at her for caring about her career. It's
yeah,
like, okay,
they take the
grow
free
up.
stuff and then they don't support her. So
No,
it's like
they don't.
Yeah.
They're not great friends.
BS.
That's bullshit.
There's a lot of divorce movies in New York, more so than LA. And it's interesting to see Marriage Story be the one that connects them both.
Marriage Story, yeah. Which that's like the one I don't know if you guys can think of any, but that's like a New York and an LA movie.
that and Come On, Come On.
Come on, that's
I'm still
right.
excited to see that.
Oh, it's so good.
That's so good.
Although I do with Come On, I think that movie, I definitely think more of the New York aspects of that movie. When Marriage Story, I think that movie, like you have a section in New York, like you have that great shot where they're on the subway and they're separated by like the what do you call them, the holding posts or whatever.
What are you?
I don't know what they're called.
It's a pole.
Pole. It's a pole. Okay, it's a pole. There is no name. It's just pole. Just separated by the pole. But then you also have the aspect in LA where she's on the set and there's like that
She
great
hooks up
line
with the
where it's like
key grip.
there's always a flirty grip.
There's always a flirt, and then she hooks up with him.
Yeah.
See, but Come On is like I think kind of more of a New York for work and then LA for the escape, like Jack was talking about.
Like Jack was talking about, yeah.
Because it's like he's based out of New York, like a lot, and he travels a lot. He doesn't just travel to LA, but LA represents like a marked step forward, and that's where he really gets to know his nephew, right?
Yeah.
His nephew, played by Woody Norman, and I think that's like the work versus the play that we're talking about.
Yeah.
LA is kind of play.
That's
New
true.
York is work,
That's
work.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
No
100%.
problem.
Any other
Chris
last
brought it up.
shout outs, guys? Any other last New York City or LA shout outs?
Any Paul Thomas Anderson movie?
Yeah, huge. All about the San Fernando Valley Licorice
Yeah.
Pizza, Magnolia, which
Boogie
is
Nights.
displayed here.
Boogie
Boogie
Nights.
Nights.
Yeah.
Also, shout out Francis Ha.
Francis Ha. That's big
York.
New
I
York movie.
Mixed opinions about it because I feel like I watch it and I'm like, just get it there on time. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that's real.
I love how that movie like shows how much you end up moving in your 20s because the sections of that movie are broken up about like where she's staying at different aspects at different times in her life. So like the one chapter will be just this address and then it'll change to this address, and like I think that's a very accurate, and I feel like that's kind of how New York can be, is that you're just kind of trying to find the most comfortable place for where you need to be at that moment, and you end up moving a lot.
It's a game.
And I think I love that little aspect of that movie. I think that's great.
I think a lot of underrated Greta Gerwig movie that I don't think any of you guys have seen. Yeah, maybe you have. Maggie's Plan. That's a great depiction.
I haven't seen
of
it.
New
What
York.
is it?
It's
What's
like
it about?
it's a woman who's like going through like her like late 20s, early 30s, obviously, and like she's sort of growing in place, and she gets involved with this teacher played by Ethan Hawke, and they sort of have like a weird sort of relationship involving maybe a child, and it's really good.
Dang.
I'm not gonna spoil too much because it's really good. Nobody really heard of it, so
Yeah. I don't know.
Should also mention Annie Hall is one that's both L.A. and New York.
I guess Woody Allen is.
I think
just-
Woody
kinda
Allen
guy.
Woody Allen
has
sucks.
He's the man.
he's been a tough name to bring up, but you can't mention New York filmmaking without
can't.
him.
And it
can't.
sucks because his movies are so good. But
I don't
you
like
can just tell
Manhattan.
he's so bad.
Yeah,
He
he
sucks.
I don't
trouble
think so.
guy.
I
It's
think he's
it's
international.
I mean, we can do a whole episode on the
What you gonna
debate
do?
of artist and art. But yeah, Annie Hall and Manhattan. Like he's made some iconic
Hannah and
New
her
York
sisters.
movies. What's that?
Hannah and Her Sisters.
Is that a Woody Allen movie?
Yeah.
He made like one a year for like 45 years, so it's pretty easy.
crazy.
There's a lot that are gonna fly under the radar. But yeah, I mean Woody Allen, you got to bring him up.
So let's vote, New York or LA.
Before you do that, also I wouldn't. So I was a TV major in college.
Yeah.
I feel like TV gets slept on a lot.
Yeah,
because it is a big
television
part of the
depictions.
industry. So I just want to shout out that I think New York has better TV shows, like Succession.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, I've been watching Girls with my girlfriend Olivia.
Oh
and
yeah,
that was really cool to see that world. So I feel like New York TV shows, but they also have Barry in LA, which
Barry's
is a fantastic
huge
show.
LA show. Yeah.
So there's a wide. I'm sure there's so many more, but TV also is very competitive. But I feel like it leans towards New York.
No, I mean absolutely LA TV. Yeah, no, we should definitely maybe just slightly touch on this for a
Graze
second.
over it.
Are there any TV shows you guys could think of? You want to bring up Friends?
Well,
You wanna bring up
I got
Friends?
my New York.
But that was
sitcom.
shot here. No?
I got my New York sitcom and I got my LA sitcom.
Okay, so the New York sitcom is Friends. Obviously, Chris is a huge fan of Friends. I like Friends too. It's a comfort show. It's about friends hanging out in New York. What
20s,
else is there to say?
Yeah.
What's your LA show? Oh,
Curb.
no.
Please tell me Curb.
No, that is a great LA
Oh.
show. Thank you for bringing that up, but that is
The
not
goat.
what he's about to
the
bring
goated
up.
LA show.
Oh no.
Bazinga.
Oh no.
They're in Pasadena. That's kind of LA.
Pasadena
no.
is Pasadena LA. I guess
I don't
yes
know.
it is. It is. Angelinos are gonna
It
get mad at me if
counts.
I say it doesn't, but yes, Pasadena's LA, but it's like I don't yeah, okay, all right, yeah, Big Bang Theory. That's an LA show.
I didn't know that took place.
All right, bring back Ethan. Replace Chris.
No,
he at?
Chris,
see,
we love
here's
ya.
the thing. A lot of the shows that are New York shows are not actually filmed in New York, it seems. A lot of them are
No, yeah, they're all
filmed in LA.
Friends was completely filmed on the Burbank.
How I Met Your
lot.
Mother
Yeah.
was mostly filmed in
Seinfeld?
LA.
Seinfeld was filmed at Radford Studios in Studio City.
See, it's like most of these shows that are like
It's because there's no space.
yeah.
Yeah,
you
Seinfeld.
can't- you
Oh,
can't do it.
wait,
You gotta
wait.
do on location.
Can't-
if you're
we
in New York.
gotta shout out Seinfeld. We gotta shout out Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Seinfeld for New York, Curb Your Enthusiasm for LA, and they're beautiful depictions of both.
It's all the dramas that are shot in New York.
But also
yeah.
Impractical Jokers. One
Oh.
of the best TV
Oh,
shows
it's
of all
so
time.
good. It's so good.
Fantastic show.
Eh.
Shot in New York, on location.
and then the movie they travel. In the movie they travel.
My
They do. They
favorite
go to
is
Atlanta. at one
Billy
point.
on the Street.
Billy on the Street in
All
right.
downtown Hollywood.
Bring back Ethan. Get rid of Brandon.
All right.
All right.
All right.
But yeah,
Should I
Let's
wrap
get
it
out
up?
of here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's good. Jack,
Time to
thank-
vote.
Yeah, guys? Where do you land?
Who has better movies?
Where?
What is
yes.
the question?
Most iconic film city.
Yeah. What is a better film city? A city for
I
I'm
can,
gonna
I can
vote.
go first.
Oh, no, go first. Yeah.
Say
you
it.
go.
It's New York.
New York.
It's
for-
got more hits. It's got better movies.
I also think New York just because it has a more definable personality, but there are still a lot of LA movies that I love. I just think it becomes a character in the story.
It's that girl.
It's that girl.
It's that guy. Whatever.
Whatever.
Man, I'm really thinking it's like, there's great stuff in both. But if I had to add one, pause. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go I'm gonna go with New York.
Hey.
Yeah.
New York's won the battle, but are you gonna make it a
The
sweep?
contrarian.
Or are
You
you
love the people.
Hold on. Here, I'm gonna guess. Ready? Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, Arizona
Oh,
cinema?
great.
If it's
Can't
not
Buy
in his
Me
bio,
Love.
it's not a great
I'm not
city.
gonna
Can't
cop
Buy Me
out.
Love. No, that's
No,
Phoenix,
it's gonna go,
Arizona. We'll do an Arizona episode.
Stars spread in the news. It's a clean sweep.
News.
It's a
folks.
clean sweep. All right. New York wins this battle. LA, we love you though. That's
Yeah.
why we live.
We're here.
Yeah,
It's
we
just-
live here, so don't
I
feel
think
too
And just
bad.
like everything, New
I
York's
think it's
better, but we're shot in LA.
incontestable.
I just
I don't think LA has any chance of ever topping New York's.
Well, it's tough because
Yeah,
I think the big thing is that like LA's movie town, everything's shot in LA, so that's why like there's so much stuff that it takes place in LA, but that doesn't mean they're LA movies. When
Right,
like I think
yeah.
if a movie is filmed in New York, you cannot remove New York from that movie.
I'm also just gonna say it. I don't think I've never met anyone who's lived in New York, and then when I ask them why they live there, they say because they hope to make it in their career so they can move out. Everyone I know in LA is like, I like it here. I want to make enough that I don't have to live here.
That is true.
That is true.
So culturally, I'd
Personal
say
goal
New
of
York.
mine.
Fair, but yeah, New York overall, best city in the world.
Yeah, but
As I represent the Atlanta hat.
he does have the Atlanta hat on. I have my new Beverly
costume
Cinema shirt
designer.
because I'm in Angelino, one of my favorite places to watch a movie, and that's what I love about LA. I love the film culture. That's pretty much why I live here.
I don't believe in brands.
And brands.
All right,
brands,
it's
we're talking
legit
about
in your
cities.
name. Brand in.
Brandon.
It's a matter of.
Hey, you know what brand I believe in though? I believe in the Stacked podcast.
I do actually. That's the only brand I believe in.
That's right.
Fuck you,
Anyway,
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for believing in the Stacked brand, and let us know. Let us know down below. Like, what do you prefer, New York City or LA in film? And also drop your favorite New York or LA movies that we didn't mention. So thank you so much, Jack, Olivia's girlfriend, for joining us.
Hell yeah.
And we'll see you all in the next one.
Back with
Bye.
Ethan. Bye.